I flew across the country to see my daughter, only to find her house silent, empty, and waiting. Then her neighbor came sprinting toward me, screaming like he'd seen a ghost. My suitcase was heavy with gifts for my grandchildren. My heart? Lighter than it had been in years. I thought this visit would heal everything. But when no one answered the door, I knew something was terribly wrong. And then, the neighbor grabbed my arm, eyes wild, voice trembling. "Leave now, before it's too late. Your daughter and son-in-law? They're not who you think they are." But what he said next, that's when I realized I wasn't just visiting my family. I was walking into a trap. I stood there, suitcase in one hand, a basket full of toys and sweets in the other, staring at the front door of my daughter's beautiful, sprawling home on the outskirts of Guadalajara. The sun was warm, the air smelled of jasmine, and for the first time in years, my heart felt light. I hadn't seen Alexa since she got married 5 years ago. Not once. Not even a phone call. Not a birthday card. Nothing. And yet, here I was, standing on her doorstep, ready to finally bridge the gap between us. It all started with a phone call. Alexa's voice, clear, bright, almost childlike, had surprised me. "Mom," she said, "Gustavo wants to make things right. He's changed. We want you to come over for dinner. Just the 4 of us. Like old times." I cried. I sobbed. I clutched the phone like it was a lifeline. For 5 years, I'd written letters, sent packages, called every Sunday, only to be met with silence or Gustavo's cold, dismissive voice. "She's busy," he'd say. "Don't call again." But now she was inviting me. She wanted me back. So I packed my oldest suitcase, the one with the broken zipper and the faded floral pattern, and filled it with everything I thought would make her smile. The silver earrings I'd saved since her wedding day. The box of cinnamon cookies Angelina loved as a toddler. Julio's favorite comic book, the one with the superhero who never gave up. I even brought a small framed photo of our last family vacation, before Gustavo, before the silence, before the pain. The bus ride from my village took 7 hours. I spent most of it staring at that photo, tracing the lines of Alexa's smiling face, wondering if she still looked like that. Wondering if she still laughed the way she used to. Wondering if she still remembered how much I loved her. When I arrived, I called her. "Come straight to the house, Mom," she said. "We're waiting for you." I smiled. I felt like I was floating. I dragged my suitcase down the quiet suburban street, past manicured lawns and white picket fences, until I saw it, the big, elegant house with the red brick driveway and the rose bushes lining the walkway. It was perfect. Too perfect. And that's when I felt it, the first chill, the first whisper of doubt. I rang the doorbell. Once. Twice. Silence. I knocked harder. "Alexa? Gustavo? It's me, Mom." No answer. Just the distant bark of a dog from the backyard, sharp and lonely. I looked up. The second-floor window was open slightly, the white curtain fluttering gently in the breeze. It looked peaceful, calm, almost serene. But something about it felt off. Wrong. Then, suddenly, the gate next door screeched open. A man burst out, older, disheveled, his shirt half-tucked, his face pale with panic. He ran straight toward me, waving his arms wildly, shouting something I couldn't understand at first. I froze. My hand tightened around the handle of my suitcase. My heart pounded like a drum. He stopped in front of me, bent over, gasping for air. His eyes were wide, terrified. "You can't go in there," he panted. "Please. Leave. Now. Before it's too late." I stared at him, confused. "What are you talking about? That's my daughter's house. Why can't I go in?" He shook his head violently. "Your daughter and her husband, they're not good people. If you go inside, you might not come out." I felt the world tilt beneath my feet. "What did they do?" I whispered, my voice cracking. He took a deep breath, lowered his voice, and said the words that would change everything. "Your son-in-law. He killed his own father. And now he's planning to kill you." He said my son-in-law murdered his own father, and now he's waiting for me to walk into the same trap. My knees buckled. The suitcase spilled open. Toys, cookies, photos, all scattered like my shattered hope. Don Javier's eyes weren't just scared. They were certain. And that terrified me more than anything. But then he leaned in, voice trembling. I've been watching him for months. And last night, I saw him bury something in the backyard. What he showed me next made my blood freeze. I couldn't move. My legs refused to obey. The world spun around me like a carousel gone mad. Don Javier's words, he killed his own father, and now he's planning to kill you, echoed in my skull. Each syllable a hammer blow to the fragile hope I'd carried all the way from my village. I stared at him, searching his face for any sign of madness, exaggeration, or cruel joke. But there was none. Only raw fear and something deeper. Resolve. Why are you telling me this? I whispered, my voice cracking like dry wood. Why risk your own safety? He exhaled sharply, glancing over his shoulder toward his own house, then back at me. Because I watched Ernesto die, he said, his voice low and urgent. Not from a heart attack. From poison. And I've been waiting for someone who'd believe me. My breath hitched. But Alexa, my daughter, she never said anything. Don Javier's expression darkened. She's trapped, Senora. Gustavo controls everything, her phone, her movements, even who she talks to. I tried to speak to her once. He caught me, threatened to report me to the police for harassment. He spat the word like it was poison itself. I looked back at the silent house, the open window, the fluttering curtain. It all felt wrong now. Too still, too staged. Come with me, Don Javier said suddenly, grabbing my arm gently but firmly. Just for a minute. I need to show you something. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed danger. But another voice, quieter, older, maternal, whispered, if this is true, Alexa needs you. And you can't help her from the sidewalk. I nodded. He led me not to his house, but around the side of my daughter's property, staying close to the hedges. The backyard was immaculate, manicured grass, a stone patio, a small fountain trickling softly. But Don Javier didn't stop there. He pointed to a patch of freshly turned earth near the fence, partially hidden by a potted olive tree. Last night, he whispered, around 2 a.m., I saw Gustavo out here with a shovel. He dug for nearly an hour, buried something small. Then he watered the spot like it was nothing. My stomach twisted. What do you think it is? I don't know, he admitted. But the next morning, I saw him burn a stack of papers in the fireplace. And he's been acting different. Nervous. Checking the mail obsessively. Watching the street. I swallowed hard. You think he's hiding evidence? I know he is. Just then, a car engine rumbled in the distance. We both froze. Don Javier pulled me behind a thick bougainvillea bush. A black sedan slowed as it passed the house, then kept going. My heart pounded. He's paranoid, Don Javier murmured. And paranoia makes people careless. But also dangerous. We stayed hidden for another minute before he guided me back to the front walkway. My spilled gifts still lay on the bricks, Angelina's candy box cracked open, Julio's red toy car upside down. I knelt to gather them, my hands shaking. Don Javier helped me. You can't go in there, he said again, softer this time. Not alone. Not without a plan. But my grandchildren are inside, I said, tears welling. What if he's already? He won't hurt them, Don Javier interrupted firmly. Not yet. They're his leverage. His shield. As long as they're safe, the neighbors won't suspect anything. The police won't intervene. But you're expendable. The word hit me like ice water. I looked at the door again. It wasn't just wood and paint anymore. It was a threshold between life and death. What should I do? I asked, voice barely audible. Don Javier reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn notebook. He tore out a page and scribbled something quickly. This is my number. Memorize it. Then burn this paper. He pressed it into my palm. If you go in, and I know you will, act normal. Don't look at him too long. Don't ask questions. And whatever you do, don't eat or drink anything he offers. I nodded, folding the paper tightly. One more thing, he said, his eyes locking onto mine. If you see something, anything suspicious, find a way to get it to me. A photo, a note, even a whisper through the fence. I have friends, people who can help. Before I could respond, the front door creaked open. I spun around. Gustavo stood there, smiling. Impeccable in a crisp white shirt, his hair still damp from a shower. "Mama," he called, his voice warm, inviting. "There you are. We've been wondering where you disappeared to." His eyes flicked to Don Javier. The smile didn't reach them. In fact, they narrowed, just slightly. Don Javier stepped back immediately, raising his hands in a gesture of innocence. "Just saying hello to your mother-in-law, Gustavo." She looked a little lost. Gustavo's smile tightened. "How kind of you. But we've got dinner waiting. Don't want it to get cold." He held out his hand to me. Not to help. To claim. I took a breath. Forced a smile. "Thank you, Don Javier," I said, loud enough for Gustavo to hear. "You're always so thoughtful." Don Javier gave a small nod. "Anytime, Senora. Enjoy your family time." He turned and walked back to his house without looking back. But I saw his shoulders tense as he passed Gustavo's line of sight. Gustavo waited until the neighbor's door closed before speaking again. "Strange man," he said lightly, still holding out his hand. "Always poking around." I ignored his hand and picked up my suitcase. "He seems kind." Gustavo's smile faltered for half a second. Then it returned, wider. "Come inside, Mama. Alexa's been crying with happiness all morning." He stepped aside to let me pass. As I crossed the threshold, I smelled it, rich, savory, familiar. Alexa's chicken soup. The one she learned from me. The one she used to make when she was heartbroken. But now, that smell filled me with dread. The house was beautiful. Polished floors, expensive art, soft lighting. But it felt hollow. Like a museum exhibit of a happy family. Everything in place. Nothing alive. Then I heard running footsteps. Abuela. Angelina and Julio burst into the hallway, arms outstretched. I dropped to my knees and caught them both, burying my face in their hair. They smelled like soap and sunshine. Real. Alive. "I missed you so much," Angelina whispered, clutching my neck. Julio pressed his toy car into my hand. "Look, Abuela. I made it go vroom all by myself." I laughed, a real laugh, despite everything. "It's the fastest car I've ever seen." But then I saw Alexa. She stood in the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on a towel. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Her smile trembled. And there, a faint bruise on her collarbone, half hidden by her blouse. Our eyes met. And in that instant, I knew. Don Javier was telling the truth. She walked over slowly, arms open. "Mama," she breathed, and pulled me into a hug so tight it hurt. I held her just as fiercely, whispering into her ear, "I know." She stiffened. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. Gustavo clapped his hands together. "All right. Enough tears. Let's eat before everything gets cold." He ushered us all to the dining table. The spread was lavish: roast chicken, rice, vegetables, fresh bread, a bottle of red wine. Too lavish. Like a performance. Gustavo poured wine into 2 glasses. Offered one to me. I shook my head. "I'm tired from the trip. Just water, please." His smile didn't waver, but his eyes flickered with something cold. "Of course, Mama. Whatever you like." He sat across from me. Alexa beside me. The children on the other side. As Alexa served the soup, her hand shook. The ladle clinked against the bowl. Gustavo watched her. "Careful, mi amor. You're spilling." "I'm fine," she murmured, voice tight. I watched her pour my soup. Watched her eyes dart to Gustavo, then to me. And, in that look, pure terror. "Don't drink it." The message was silent. but I heard it loud and clear. I picked up my spoon, stirred the soup slowly. Steam curled upward, carrying the scent of home and something else. Something metallic. My stomach clenched. Gustavo leaned forward, elbows on the table. So, Mama, tell us about the village. Has anything changed? I forced a smile. Same as always. Quiet. Peaceful. Sounds boring, he said, chuckling. But his eyes never left my hands. I lifted the spoon, brought it close to my lips. Alexa's breath caught. I paused, then set the spoon down. Actually, I'm not very hungry. Maybe after I rest a bit. Gustavo's jaw tightened. Just for a second. Then he shrugged. Suit yourself. But as he turned to serve himself, I saw it, the way his fingers lingered near the salt shaker. The way he glanced at the cabinet under the sink. That's where it is, I realized. The cyanide. The rest of dinner passed in a haze of forced laughter and loaded silences. Gustavo told stories about work. Alexa nodded along, eyes downcast. The children chattered innocently, oblivious to the storm beneath the surface. After dinner, Gustavo announced he was taking a shower. You two can clean up, he said, his tone light but commanding. The moment he disappeared down the hall, Alexa grabbed my arm and pulled me into the kitchen. Mama, you can't stay here, she whispered, tears streaming. He's going to kill you. I heard him on the phone. He said you're the last loose end. Where's the cyanide? I asked, voice low. She pointed under the sink. In a small glass jar. Behind the bleach. I nodded. I'll get proof. But we need help. I tried calling the police, she choked out. He found my phone. Smashed it. Said if I ever tried again, he'd take the kids and disappear. Just then, the shower turned off. We froze. Alexa wiped her face quickly, grabbed a dish towel, and started wiping the counter. I pretended to rinse glasses. Gustavo walked in, towel around his neck, hair damp. He looked between us. Everything all right? Fine, Alexa said too quickly. He smiled. Good. But as he passed me, he paused. You know, Mama, accidents happen so easily in old age. A fall. A bad meal. A heart that just gives out. I met his gaze. I've survived worse. His smile vanished. For just a heartbeat. Then he walked out. That night, I lay on the living room sofa, wide awake. Through the thin wall, I heard muffled shouting. Alexa crying. Gustavo's voice low, venomous. And then silence. Angelina crept out of her room and curled up beside me. Abuela, is Papa going to hurt Mama again? I held her close. No, mi vida. Not anymore. But I didn't know if I was lying. At dawn, I made my decision. While Gustavo slept, I crept to the kitchen. Opened the cabinet under the sink. And there it was, a small glass jar. Label in bold red letters, cyanide. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. Took a photo. Sent it to the number Don Javier gave me. Then I hid the phone in my shoe. Because I knew, today would be the day everything changed. The moment I sent the photo of the cyanide jar to Don Javier's number, my entire body went cold. Not from fear, from clarity. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't misunderstanding. This was murder. And I was standing in the kitchen of a killer. I closed the cabinet slowly, my fingers trembling so badly I nearly knocked over a bottle of dish soap. I wiped my palms on my skirt, trying to steady my breath. Act normal. Act like nothing happened. But my mind raced. What if he checks his phone? What if he sees Don Javier's messages? What if he already suspects me? As if summoned by my thoughts, the bathroom door clicked open down the hall. I froze. Water dripped from Gustavo's hair as he stepped into the hallway, towels slung over one shoulder. He didn't look at me right away. Instead, he walked to the fridge, pulled out a bottle of water, and twisted the cap off with slow, deliberate movements. You've been quiet tonight, Mama, he said, still not facing me. His voice was calm. Too calm. I'm just tired, I replied, forcing a smile. Long trip. Old bones. He took a long sip, then finally turned. His eyes, dark, unreadable, locked onto mine. "You spent a lot of time under the sink." My heart stopped. I kept my expression neutral, just looking for a clean sponge. The one on the counter smelled sour. He nodded slowly. Of course." But he didn't move. He just stood there, watching me like a predator circling its prey. Alexa appeared in the doorway then, holding a damp dishcloth. "Gustavo, can you help me with the chairs? They're stuck." He didn't answer her immediately. He kept staring at me. Then, with a faint smile, he said, "Of course, mi amor." As he passed me, his shoulder brushed mine, just slightly. But I felt the tension in his muscles, the coiled anger beneath his skin. The moment he turned the corner, Alexa grabbed my arm and pulled me into the pantry. "Did you send it?" she whispered, eyes wide. I nodded. "Yes, but he knows something's off." She swallowed hard. "He's been watching you since you arrived. Every move, every word. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, voice low but urgent. "Because he threatened to take the kids," she choked out. "He said if I ever tried to leave or tell anyone, he'd disappear with them. Change their names. Move to another country. I'd never see them again." I gripped her hand. "We're not letting that happen." Just then, we heard Gustavo's footsteps approaching the kitchen again. Alexa shoved a bag of rice into my hands. "Pretend we're organizing." We stood side by side, stacking cans and wiping shelves, our backs to the door. Gustavo leaned against the frame, arms crossed. "You two seem awfully close tonight," he said, tone light but eyes sharp. "We're just catching up," Alexa said quickly. "Mama hasn't seen the pantry since we renovated." He chuckled. "Right. Renovated." He stepped inside, picked up a jar of olives, and examined it like he'd never seen it before. "You know, Mama, trust is a fragile thing. Once it's broken, it's hard to rebuild." I met his gaze. "I've never broken your trust, Gustavo." "Haven't you?" he asked, setting the jar down with a soft clink. "Then why do I feel like you're hiding something?" Before I could answer, Angelina burst in. "Papa." Julio spilled juice on the rug. Gustavo's expression shifted instantly, fatherly, patient. "Again? All right, let's go clean it up." He left without another word. Alexa exhaled shakily. "He's testing us. We need to get the children out of here," I said. "I've tried," she whispered. "He won't let them leave the house without him. Not even to the park." That night, I lay awake on the sofa, listening to the house breathe. The hum of the refrigerator. The creak of floorboards. The distant sound of Gustavo's voice, low, urgent, on the phone. I crept to the hallway and pressed my ear to his study door. "Yes, tomorrow night," he was saying. "She's suspicious, but she doesn't know everything. Once she's gone, the inheritance is secure. Alexa won't fight me without her mother backing her." My blood turned to ice. He wasn't just planning to kill me. He was planning to take everything. I slipped back to the living room just as his door opened. I pretended to be asleep, but I felt his shadow fall over me. Felt his breath as he stood there, watching. Then he walked away. At dawn, I made a decision. I waited until Gustavo left for his morning meeting, a lie, I was sure, and Alexa was distracted with the children. Then I went back to the kitchen. This time, I didn't just take a photo. I took the jar. It was small, no bigger than my palm, but heavy with death. I wrapped it in a dish towel and tucked it into the inner pocket of my coat. If he noticed it missing, I'd say I was cleaning and accidentally knocked it into my bag. But I knew he'd never believe that. Still, I had to try. I needed proof the police couldn't ignore. As I turned to leave the kitchen, I heard a soft gasp. Angelina stood in the doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Her eyes were wide, not with fear, but with understanding. "Abuela," she whispered, "is that the bad thing Papa keeps in the dark?" My heart shattered. I knelt and pulled her close. "Yes, mi vida. But don't tell anyone. Not even Mommy. Can you keep a secret for Abuela?" She nodded solemnly. "I won't let him hurt you." In that moment, I saw it. The same courage that ran in our blood. My daughters. My granddaughters. Mine. We were not victims. We were survivors. But survival required more than courage. It required a plan. I texted Don Javier, "I have it. Meet me at the bus stop in 20 minutes. He replied instantly, "Wear a hat. Keep your head down. He's watching." I kissed Angelina's forehead, tucked the jar deeper into my coat, and walked out the front door, just as Gustavo's black sedan turned the corner. My pulse spiked. I kept walking. He slowed as he passed me, rolled down his window. "Going somewhere, Mama?" "Just to buy bread," I said, holding up my empty tote bag. The kids wanted fresh rolls. He studied me for a long moment, then smiled. "Don't be long. We have a family dinner tonight. Special." The word hung in the air like a threat. I nodded. "I'll be back soon." As his car disappeared down the street, I broke into a run. Don Javier was waiting at the bus stop, pretending to read a newspaper. The moment I reached him, he took my arm and guided me behind the shelter. "Did you get it?" he asked, voice tight. I pulled out the jar. His face paled. "Madre de Dios. I need to give this to the police," I said. "But I can't go to the station." "He'll follow me." Don Javier nodded. "I know someone. A retired detective. Lives 2 blocks from here. He owes me a favor." We walked quickly, silently, through the back alleys of the neighborhood. Every shadow felt like a trap. Every passing car a threat. When we reached the detective's house, a small, ivy-covered cottage with a rusted gate, Don Javier knocked 3 times. An old man with a cane opened the door. His eyes narrowed when he saw the jar. "Cyanide," he said, not as a question, but as a fact. "Yes," I said. "From my son-in-law's kitchen. He killed his father with it. And he's planning to kill me." The detective didn't hesitate. "Come inside." He took the jar, sealed it in a plastic bag, and called someone on a landline I hadn't seen in decades. "Torres," he said. "It's me. We got the evidence. And the witness." He turned to me. "You're going to be safe now, Senora. But you must stay hidden until we move." I thought of Alexa. Of the children. "I can't leave them," I said. "You won't have to," he replied. "We're taking all of you tonight." As we stepped back onto the street, my phone buzzed. A text from Alexa. "He's back early. He's looking for you. Hurry." Don Javier grabbed my hand. "Run." We sprinted toward home, hearts pounding, breath ragged. But when we turned the corner, we saw it. Gustavo's car was parked in the driveway. And he was standing on the porch, waiting. He held a kitchen knife in one hand, and my phone in the other. "You shouldn't have taken it, Mama," he said, voice eerily calm. "Now I have no choice." He stepped forward. I stepped back. Don Javier moved in front of me. "Leave her alone, Gustavo." Gustavo laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Or what, old man? You'll call the police? They won't get here in time." He raised the knife. And that's when the sirens began. Not 1, not 2, a whole fleet. Red and blue lights flooded the street. Gustavo froze. From behind the trees, from the alley, from the rooftops, officers emerged, weapons drawn. At the front of them stood a woman in a dark jacket, holding a badge. "Gustavo Mendez," she said, voice sharp as steel. "Drop the weapon. You're under arrest for the murder of Ernesto Mendez and attempted murder of Maria Elena Rojas." Gustavo's face twisted in rage. He turned to me, eyes burning with hatred. "This isn't over," he spat. Then he dropped the knife. As they cuffed him, I ran inside. Alexa and the children were huddled in the living room, tears streaming. I fell to my knees and pulled them all into my arms. "It's over," I whispered. "He can't hurt us anymore." But as I held them, I knew the real battle was just beginning. The trial, the testimony, the truth, and the world watching. The moment Gustavo was dragged out of the house in handcuffs, I thought it was over. The nightmare had ended. Justice had arrived. But as I held Angelina and Julio close, their small bodies trembling against mine, I saw Alexa's face, and I knew better. She stood frozen in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, eyes wide not with relief, but with terror. "He'll come back," she whispered, voice barely audible. "He always finds a way." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that the police had him, that the evidence was undeniable. But then I remembered the look in his eyes as they hauled him into the squad car, cold, calculating, full of promise. This isn't over. And he'd proven that before. 5 years of silence. 5 years of control. 5 years of making my daughter disappear from my life without ever laying a hand on her in public. Now he was exposed, humiliated, arrested. And that made him more dangerous than ever. The lead detective, Comandante Torres, stayed behind after the others left. He was a tall man with salt and pepper hair and eyes that had seen too much, but never enough to become numb. "Senora Rojas," he said gently, "you and your family are safe now. But Gustavo has connections. We've already flagged his phone calls, his visitors, even his mail. If he tries to contact anyone on the outside, we'll know." I nodded, but my stomach twisted. What about his family? His cousins? His business partners? Torres exchanged a glance with Lucia Morales, the young investigator who'd become our quiet guardian angel. "We're watching them too. But for now, stay inside. Don't answer the door to strangers. And if you see anything unusual, even a car parked too long, call us immediately." He handed me a burner phone. "This number only rings to me or Lucia. No one else knows it exists." I took it like a lifeline. After they left, silence settled over the house, but it wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, suspicious. Every creak of the floorboard, every rustle of the curtains, felt like a warning. Alexa finally broke down. She collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing into her hands. "I thought I was protecting you by staying silent," she choked out. But all I did was let him get stronger. I sat beside her, wrapping my arms around her like I did when she was 5 and scared of thunderstorms. "You survived, Mija. That's not weakness. That's courage." She looked up, tears streaking her face. "But what if he gets out? What if he hurts the kids?" "He won't," I said firmly. "Because we're not going to let him." But even as I said it, doubt gnawed at me. That night, I slept on the living room floor, one hand on the burner phone, the other on Julio's blanket. Angelina curled up beside me, clutching her stuffed rabbit like a shield. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. Not the burner. My personal one. A text from an unknown number. "You should have stayed in your village, old woman." I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I showed it to Alexa. She went pale. "He's already reaching out." But Lucia called 5 minutes later. "We traced it," she said, voice tight. "It came from a disposable phone bought at a gas station near the prison. We're reviewing security footage now." "Can he do this from inside?" I asked. "He shouldn't be able to," she admitted. But Gustavo's smart. And desperate. The next morning, Don Javier brought over fresh bread and coffee. He didn't say much, just sat at the kitchen table, watching the street like a sentinel. "He's not alone," he murmured after a while. "I saw a black SUV drive by 3 times yesterday. No plates." My blood ran cold. Later that day, Alexa went to check on the laundry. She screamed. I ran to the utility room and found a note pinned to her blouse with a safety pin. 3 words written in neat, looping script. "I'm watching you." But it wasn't Gustavo's handwriting. Alexa's hands shook as she showed it to me. This is his mother's writing." My stomach dropped. Gustavo's mother, Dona Consuelo, had never liked me. She'd called me that village woman at the wedding, said I'd raised Alexa to be too soft. After Ernesto's death, she'd vanished, moved to Mexico City, or so we thought. "She's here," Alexa whispered. "She's helping him." We called Lucia immediately. Within an hour, plainclothes officers were stationed at both ends of the street. Don Javier, coincidentally, started watering his plants every hour, binoculars hidden in his apron. 2 days later, a woman in a wide-brimmed hat and dark sunglasses appeared at the bus stop across the street. She lingered, took photos of our house with her phone. Lucia and Torres moved fast. They arrested Dona Consuelo before she could even cross the street. In her purse, a burner phone, a map of our neighborhood, and a list of our daily routines. Mama leaves at 9 a.m. for market. Kids walk to school at 7:45. She denied everything, said she was just visiting her grandchildren. But Alexa identified the handwriting. And the phone? It had 17 calls to Gustavo's prison number. Now they had him for conspiracy. But the real shock came during interrogation. Dona Consuelo broke down and confessed. Gustavo hadn't acted alone in Ernesto's murder. He had help, she sobbed. From someone inside the house. My blood turned to ice. Inside the house. Only 2 people lived there, Alexa and Gustavo. Unless. I looked at Alexa. Her face went white. No, she whispered. Not her. Who? I asked, dread coiling in my chest. Rosa, she said. Our housekeeper. She's been with us since the wedding. Rosa, the quiet woman who cooked, cleaned, and never spoke unless spoken to. The one who always smiled at the children. The one who brought me tea the first night I arrived. And the one who'd been in the kitchen every time Gustavo served me food. We called Lucia again. This time, she arrived with a warrant. Rosa was taken in for questioning. At first, she denied everything. But when they showed her bank records, large deposits from Gustavo's account every month, she cracked. She admitted it all. She'd been the one to mix the cyanide into Ernesto's wine when Gustavo distracted him during dinner. She'd watched him die, then helped Gustavo stage the scene to look like a heart attack. And she'd been ready to do the same to me. I didn't want to, she cried. But he threatened my daughter. Said he'd have her deported if I didn't help. It was a web wider, darker, and more tangled than we'd ever imagined. But with Rosa's testimony, the case against Gustavo became unbreakable. Still, Alexa couldn't sleep. Every night, she checked the locks 3 times. Every morning, she scanned the street before letting the kids out. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, she turned to me. Mama, what if he gets a new lawyer? What if he appeals? What if he walks free? I took her hand. Then we'll be ready. But the truth was I didn't know. Because evil doesn't die when you lock it away. It waits. It plans. It watches. And sometimes, it sends someone else to finish what it started. Just then, Angelina ran out with a drawing. Look, Abuela. I drew our family. I smiled until I saw it. In the corner of the page, behind the house, stood a shadowy figure. No face, just eyes. And in tiny letters beneath it, he sees us. The morning of the trial dawned gray and heavy, as if the sky itself carried the weight of what was about to unfold. I dressed slowly, black dress, simple shoes, my silver earrings from Alexa's wedding day. Not for mourning, for truth. Alexa sat at the kitchen table, stirring her coffee without drinking it. Her hands no longer shook, but her eyes were hollow, like someone who'd survived a war but hadn't yet come home. Are you ready, Mama? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. I placed a hand over hers. We've been ready since the day he tried to poison me. We didn't take Gustavo's car. We didn't walk down that street. Lucia picked us up in an unmarked sedan, her expression unreadable, but her presence steady as stone. The courthouse loomed like a fortress. Reporters clustered near the entrance, cameras flashing like angry fireflies. Someone shouted, "Is it true he killed his own father?" Another yelled, "Did he really try to kill his mother-in-law?" I kept my head high. Let them see me. Let them see us. Inside, the air was cold, sterile. The courtroom was already half full. Neighbors, journalists, even a few curious strangers. And there, in the front row, sat Don Javier. He gave me a small nod. No words. Just solidarity. Then the doors at the back opened. Gustavo entered in a crisp white shirt, hands cuffed but posture straight. His lawyer, A slick man with expensive glasses walked beside him, whispering urgently. But Gustavo wasn't listening. His eyes swept the room and stopped on me. No rage, no panic, just a slow, chilling smile. He knew something. I felt it in my bones. The bailiff called the court to order. Judge Marquez, a woman with sharp eyes and silver hair pulled into a severe bun, took her seat. She wasted no time. State versus Gustavo Mendez, she announced. Charges: premeditated murder of Ernesto Mendez and attempted murder of Maria Elena Rojas. Gustavo's lawyer immediately stood. Your Honor, we request dismissal. The so-called evidence is circumstantial at best. A grieving widow, an estranged daughter, both with motive to fabricate. My blood boiled, but I stayed silent. This wasn't my moment. Not yet. The prosecutor, a calm man named Vargas, rose. Your Honor, we have forensic proof of cyanide in Ernesto Mendez's system. Bank records showing Gustavo inherited the estate hours after the death. A signed debt note to a known criminal syndicate. And a photograph of cyanide stored in the defendant's kitchen, taken by the intended victim herself. He turned to the jury. This isn't speculation. This is a blueprint for murder. Gustavo didn't flinch. Then came Rosa, the housekeeper. Pale, trembling, she took the stand in a plain blue dress. Under oath, she confessed everything. How Gustavo paid her to watch Ernesto, how she saw him slip the powder into his wine, how she helped clean the scene. He said if I didn't help, she whispered, he'd have my daughter deported. I was scared. Gustavo's lawyer pounced. Isn't it true you were fired last month? That you're bitter? That you'd say anything to avoid your own legal troubles? Rosa broke down sobbing. I didn't want to, but he made me. The jury exchanged glances. Some looked away. Others leaned forward. Then it was Alexa's turn. She walked to the stand like a woman stepping onto a battlefield. No tears. No hesitation. On the night my mother visited, she began, voice clear and steady. I overheard Gustavo on the phone. He said, the old woman will be here tomorrow. Make sure the cyanide is ready. I tried to warn her without him knowing. That's why I spilled the soup twice. Gustavo's lawyer smirked. Convenient. No recording. No witness. Just your word against his. Alexa turned to him, eyes blazing. Ask him why he burned his father's medical records. Ask him why he changed all the locks the day after Ernesto died. Ask him why he threatened to take my children if I ever called the police. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Marquez leaned forward. Mr. Mendez, do you deny these allegations? Gustavo stood slowly. I loved my father, he said, voice smooth as oil. And I welcomed my mother-in-law with open arms. This is a family tragedy being twisted into a crime by people who never understood us. He turned to me. Mama, I know you're confused. Grief does strange things to the mind. I wanted to scream, to leap across the room and claw the lies from his throat. But I stayed still, because then the judge said the words I'd been dreading and waiting for. Senora Rojas, please take the stand. My legs felt like lead as I walked forward. Every eye in the room burned into my back. I placed my hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and sat. Vargas began gently. Can you describe the day you visited your daughter's home? I did. The suitcase. The toys. The silence. Don Javier's warning. The cyanide under the sink. The poisoned soup. The knife in Gustavo's hand the night of the arrest. And why? Vargas asked. Do you believe Gustavo wanted you dead? Because I was the only one who could expose him, I said. Because I knew about Ernesto. Because I saw the truth, and truth is dangerous to men like him. Gustavo's lawyer rose for cross-examination. He didn't shout. He didn't sneer. He smiled. Senora Rojas, you're 70 years old. You live alone in a remote village. Isn't it possible your memory is unreliable? I remember every second, I said. Do you have medical records confirming your mental clarity? I have the cyanide jar. I have the texts. I have my daughter's testimony. But no direct proof he tried to poison you, correct? I hesitated. Not in the pot. But he offered me wine, soup, coffee. Every meal was a test. He leaned in. Or perhaps you were so afraid of your son-in-law that you imagined threats where none existed? Before I could answer, something fluttered to the floor at my feet. A small slip of paper, folded neatly. I picked it up instinctively, unfolded it. In neat, looping script, just like the note under Alexa's pillow, it read, "They're watching you too." My breath caught. I looked up. Gustavo was watching me, a faint smile playing on his lips. But it wasn't him who wrote it, because as I scanned the courtroom, I saw her. Dona Consuelo, Gustavo's mother, sitting in the back row, wearing dark sunglasses, holding a handbag too large for her frame. And beside her, a man I'd never seen before. Tall, scarred cheek, cold eyes. Lucia had warned me about him. Salgado's enforcer. If he's here, Gustavo's not fighting alone. I handed the note to Vargas. "Your Honor, I believe I'm being threatened." The judge's eyes narrowed. She took the note, read it, then glared at the back of the room. "Bailiff, remove those two individuals immediately." Dona Consuelo stood, furious. "You can't do that. I'm family." "You're under investigation for conspiracy," the judge snapped. "Leave. Now." As they were escorted out, Gustavo's smile vanished. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. But it wasn't fear of prison. It was fear of them. Because if he talked, if he implicated the Salgado cartel, they wouldn't just kill him. They'd kill us. The trial recessed for lunch. Lucia pulled me aside in the hallway. "That note wasn't just a threat," she said, voice low. "It was a message. They know you're the key witness. If Gustavo goes down, they lose their leverage. And they don't forgive loose ends. So what do we do?" I asked. "We finish this," she said. Today, back in court, Vargas called his final witness, the forensic toxicologist who confirmed cyanide in Ernesto's tissues. Then he played the audio, Don Javier's testimony about Ernesto's last words. "My son put something in my wine." The jury was silent. Then Gustavo's lawyer made his closing argument. "This is a story built on fear, not facts. A grieving daughter, a lonely grandmother, a neighbor with too much time on his hands. Where's the proof Gustavo acted alone? Where's the motive beyond speculation?" Vargas stood. The motive was greed. The method was poison. The evidence is overwhelming. And the victims? They're sitting right here. He pointed to Alexa. To me. Don't let fear silence them again. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood. "We find the defendant guilty on all counts." Gustavo didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at me with eyes full of venom. The judge sentenced him to life without parole. As they led him away, he turned one last time and mouthed, "This isn't over." I believed him, because evil doesn't die in prison. It just waits and watches. The gavel cracked like thunder. Guilty. The word echoed through the courtroom, bouncing off marble walls and cold steel benches. Alexa exhaled, a sound so deep it seemed to come from her bones. I squeezed her hand, tears blurring my vision. It was over. After years of silence, fear, and poison, justice had finally spoken. But then I saw him. Juror number 7, a man in a gray suit, late 50s, salt and pepper hair, stood with the others as the verdict was read. He clapped once, mechanically, like he was fulfilling a duty. Then, as bailiffs led Gustavo away in chains, the man turned and winked. Not at the judge, not at the prosecutor, at Gustavo. My breath caught. My blood turned to ice. Alexa didn't notice. She was hugging Angelina, whispering, "It's over, mi vida." But I couldn't look away. The juror met my gaze for half a second, just long enough to let me know he knew I'd seen it, then turned and walked out with the rest. "Mama?" Alexa tugged my sleeve. "Are you okay?" I forced a smile. "Yes, Mija. just tired. But inside, alarm bells screamed. We left the courthouse surrounded by reporters, but Lucia cleared a path. She ushered us into an unmarked van, her face grim. "Get in," she said. "Now." Once the doors closed, she turned to me. "Did you see it too?" My stomach dropped. "You saw it." She nodded. "Juror number 7. His name is Raul Mendoza. Owns a small construction firm. Filed for bankruptcy last year. Guess who bailed him out?" "Gustavo," I whispered. "Or the Salgado cartel," she corrected. "We've been watching him since the trial started. But we couldn't prove collusion until today." Alexa's face paled. "You mean, the verdict could be overturned?" "Not yet," Lucia said. "But if Mendoza recants, the whole case collapses. And Gustavo walks." The van pulled into a secure garage beneath a government building. We were led through a series of locked doors to a safe room, plain walls, 2 cots, a table, and a landline that only rang to Lucia's desk. "You'll stay here until we sort this out," she said. "No phones. No internet. No contact with the outside world." I looked at Angelina and Julio, wide-eyed and confused. "For how long?" "As long as it takes." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that wink. That silent pact between predator and accomplice. At 2 a.m., the phone rang. Lucia's voice was tight. "Mendoza just filed an affidavit. Says he was pressured by outside forces to vote guilty. Claims he never believed Gustavo was guilty." "Can they do that?" I asked. "They can try," she said. "But here's the kicker, he didn't go to the judge. He went straight to Gustavo's lawyer. And the lawyer visited Gustavo in prison 2 hours later." My hands clenched. "He's still running the show from inside." "Worse," Lucia said. "We intercepted a call. Gustavo told his lawyer, 'Tell Mendoza the children will be next if he backs out now.'" I froze. "The children?" "Angelina and Julio," she confirmed. "He knows where they are." He always knew. I looked at my grandchildren, sleeping on the cots, their faces peaceful in the dim light. My heart shattered. "What do we do?" I whispered. "We fight smarter," Lucia said. "Tomorrow, I'm bringing in Comandante Torres. And someone else." "Who?" "A man who knows the Salgado cartel better than anyone alive." The next morning, a tall man with a scar across his left eyebrow entered the room. He moved like a shadow, as silent, precise, dangerous. "This is Mateo," Lucia said. "Former cartel enforcer. Turned state's witness 5 years ago." Mateo nodded. His voice was low, gravelly. "Gustavo Mendez is small time. But he's connected. The Salgados don't like loose ends. And you," he looked at me, "are the loosest of all. Why are you helping us?" Alexa asked, arms wrapped around herself. "Because Gustavo killed my cousin," Mateo said flatly. "Ernesto Mendez wasn't just his father. He was my cousin's business partner. When Gustavo poisoned him, he stole our money too." He pulled a file from his coat. "I've been gathering evidence for months. Bank transfers, phone logs, even a recording of Gustavo bragging about the murder at a cartel party." I stared at him. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" "Because I needed proof you were real," he said. "Not another pawn in his game." He handed me a photo. It showed Gustavo shaking hands with a man I recognized from the courtroom, Dona Consuelo's companion. "The enforcer." "That's Diego Salgado," Mateo said. "The boss's nephew. He was in the courthouse yesterday. Watching." My blood ran cold. So the trial. It was never about justice. It was a message. Mateo nodded. "To you. To the police. To anyone who thinks they can cross the Salgados and live." We spent the day planning. Mateo revealed that Gustavo had a secret account in Belize, funded by cartel money. If the verdict stood, the account would be frozen. But if Gustavo got a retrial, he could move the funds and disappear with his mother. "And take your grandchildren with him," Mateo added. "He's already forged custody papers." Alexa broke down. "He can't have them. Not after everything." "He won't," I said, voice hard as stone. Because we're going to expose him before he even gets out of prison. That evening, Lucia brought news. Mendoza had vanished. His car was found abandoned near the bus station. His phone was left on the passenger seat, screen cracked, battery dead. But in his pocket, police found a note, written in the same looping script as before. Silence is survival. It was signed with a single letter, S. Salgado. Mateo's face darkened. They've got him. Or they've killed him. Either way, the jury's compromised. I looked at Alexa, at my grandchildren, at the walls closing in around us. Then I made a decision. I'll go public, I said. Lucia shook her head. It's too dangerous. More dangerous than letting him win? I countered. If the world sees what he did, if they see the cyanide, the forged documents, the threats, no court can ignore it. Mateo studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded. There's a journalist. Works for El Universal. She's been trying to crack the Salgado network for years. I'll set up a meeting. 2 days later, I sat across from Elena Rojas, no relation, behind bulletproof glass, in a secure office downtown. She listened without interrupting as I told her everything. The cyanide, the trial, the wink, the threats. When I finished, she leaned forward. Do you have proof? I handed her a USB drive, photos, recordings, Mateo's files. She plugged it in. Her eyes widened as she scrolled. This could bring down half the cartel, she whispered. Then publish it, I said. Not for me. For every mother who's been silenced. For every child who's lived in fear. She hesitated. They'll come for you. Let them, I said. I'm not hiding anymore. The article dropped at midnight. The poison verdict. How a murderer manipulated justice from behind bars. By dawn, it had gone viral. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse. News helicopters circled the prison. The Attorney General launched an emergency review. And Gustavo? He lost his privileges. His phone. His visitors. But worst of all, he lost control. Because now, the world was watching. And evil hates an audience. Gustavo's life sentence should have been the end. But evil doesn't die, it echoes. 3 weeks after the verdict, I received a letter. No return address. Just my name, written in that same looping script, you won. Inside, a single photograph. It showed Angelina and Julio walking to school, taken from a distance. Too close. Too detailed. My blood froze. Lucia traced the envelope. It came from a prison mailroom. Gustavo never touched it, but someone loyal did. He's sending a message, she said. Not a threat. A promise. But I refused to live in fear. We moved. Not far, just far enough. A small house near the river, with yellow walls and a garden Alexa now tends every morning. Don Javier visits every Sunday, always with fruit, never with fear. Gustavo's mother vanished. The Salgado cartel collapsed under federal raids. Rosa, the housekeeper, entered witness protection. Justice, it turned out, had teeth. At night, I still hear the echo of that kitchen, the steam rising from poisoned soup, the clink of the cyanide jar, Alexa's trembling hands. But now, those sounds are buried under laughter. Angelina draws again, bright colors, smiling suns, families holding hands. Julio races his toy cars across the floor, shouting Virum. No bad guys today, abuela. And Alexa? She sleeps through the night. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching fireflies, she turned to me. Do you think he'll ever stop watching us? I took her hand. Maybe, but we're not watching back anymore. Because survival isn't just about living through the storm. It's about planting flowers in the wreckage. I never returned to that house in Guadalajara. But I kept one thing. The red toy car Julio dropped on the bricks the day it all began. I keep it on my nightstand. A reminder. Not of the poison, but of the love that refused to be silenced. And if you're watching this, know this. You are not alone. Speak. Run. Fight. Your story isn't over until you say it is.